Well, you are chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee, and that's a big issue in a state as crowded as this one. Let's talk about something that has been discussed for many years, mass transit in Florida.
Yes.
Give us a look at where that issue is and where it's going.
Well, when I was in the House, we worked a lot with the former governor, Governor Bush, on his whole idea of a strategic intermodal system, where you really looked at the major areas, the Orlando, Tampa, Miami, Jacksonville, over into Tallahassee, of course, as the major transit areas, and how do you connect them and move people rapidly. And that includes rail, that includes bus, that includes roads. And now what we're trying to do is we're trying to implement some of those goals and really the vision for what transportation could potentially be.
Well, when you say strategic intermodal, you mean connecting the larger cities?
Absolutely, absolutely. And really looking at, and if you listen to President Obama, he has talked about infrastructure, but also rail, commuter rail, and even high-speed rail. And what we are trying to do here in the state of Florida is how can we position ourselves to be a part of those discussions as we move forward.
Well, give your constituents and Floridians a vision of, say, where we might be in 10 years with regard to mass transit.
Well, the vision really has been started long before even I got here. When you look at Tampa starting the discussion about commuter rail, of course Miami with Tri-Rail has been in place and they're looking at expansion. Even Jacksonville is starting that discussion. Of course, in Orlando, Sunrail, which is our commuter rail plan, is a very important issue. And eventually, I believe, you will see all those connected and then some type of an interconnection, not just from rail, but also the extension of the existing highway system.
Something I know you've been interested in throughout your legislative career has been health care and the provision of health care to people in need. And we've got a tough budget, and we'll have a tough budget because of downturn in the state economy. What priorities are you bringing to discussions of cuts in health care programs?
Well, one thing that we have been advocating for a long time, and I worked with Representative Ausley on a lot of these issues last year, is really try to look at the early intervention, getting the child from really 0 to 5 with speech therapy and occupational therapy, and really trying to explain to members that if you make that investment early, you're really going to save the state money over time. Clearly, the financial situation has made it somewhat of a challenge, but of course, when you look at the stimulus money and our ability to move some of those monies around, I think we've been very, very good at really trying to keep health care, hold it harmless as we have with education as we move forward.
Well, how do you think the stimulus money coming from Washington will impact areas like education and health care, and can it plug a big enough hole?
Well, it can plug to some extent, but what we have been a little bit concerned about, some of the stimulus money really makes us shift our philosophy and move money into affordable housing areas that may sound good, but the state of Florida has taken a different view of how some of that money should be spent. We're trying to work through that. Of course, Governor Christ has been real active in trying to get the education waiver, which is very important because each state is different on how we do education. So we're working on that waiver. If that comes through, then I think we'll be able to move forward in a very positive way.
Got about a minute left. Talk about legislation that is a personal priority of yours for your district.
Well, of course, commuter rail. You know, we've been spending a lot of time on that. As chairman of the Transportation Committee, that's something we have been working on. But also, one of the things that we've looked at and will continue to is with children in need and really looking at how can we work with the insurance companies to provide a lot of that early intervention so it doesn't just rely on the state to cover those services, but how can we partner with the insurance companies? Because in the end, it helps everybody in cost down the road.
Quick question, will there be need for new revenue sources? About 15 seconds.
Well, there are going to be some revenue sources just based on increase in fines and some of the fees for just generally doing business. We have to keep in mind, I fundamentally believe that just 6 years ago, or even 5 years ago, this same economy, the same tax structure and everything else created an additional $10 billion. So we're dealing with a downturn in the global economy, but we need to make sure that we make some very responsible decisions here and not go down a road where we're not going to be able to get back from.